Is the familiar bell starting to toll at Tottenham as players' agents start to pipe up at their players being unhappy at a lack of Champions League football, or leaking stories about how flattered they are to be linked to other clubs? I'll be talking about two centre-halves who seem to be starting the transfer dance already. Meanwhile, reports that Daniel Levy is in talks personally with an England star, and some good performances over the international break for some of our first team and young stars, as well as news of Tottenham trying to do the right thing in the local community. All this and more on today's episode of the Spurred On podcast. Guys, thank you so much for watching and listening. Please do give this video a like. Please press subscribe for daily Tottenham Hotspur content and Premier League and European transfers as we get closer to that transfer window. You can also become a member. Just £1 a month really helps me make this daily content for you. All the details how in the description box below. But let's get started. And Daniel Levy, from all reports coming out yesterday, is personally taking control of negotiations with Angel Gomez, who is set to become a free agent at the end of the season, and therefore, because he plays abroad, can sign a pre-contract agreement with a foreign club this January. So with it already being, November the 20th, Daniel Levy apparently getting in there, and Gomez looking to get about £150,000 a week from his next club. Now, let's face it, he is a pretty regular starter for England now, certainly was under Lee Carsley. Let's see if he gets in the team under Thomas Tuchel, and his stock has really risen in the last 6 to 8 months or so. So you could totally understand why him and his agents are looking to get £150,000 a week. However, whether Tottenham Hotspur would be willing to go to £150,000 a week for a player who has only made a handful of starts for England and doesn't realistically have a lot of Premier League experience. It'll be interesting to see whether that's a deal they're willing to do. But because his contract is running down and he'll be able to sign for a free in the summer with a huge signing on fee, that kind of wage isn't as huge as you'd imagine when you think about the fact that there will be no transfer fee involved. Let me know in the comments below. Is Angel Gomez somebody you rate? Is he somebody you think could do a job for Spurs in that number 6 position? A lot of fans, a lot of pundits, a lot of podcasters talking about how Tottenham are still lacking in that 6th position. They talk about how Rodrigo Bentancur isn't a natural 6, how Yves Bissouma isn't even a natural 6. Don't forget, when Yves Bissouma was playing for Brighton, I certainly remember him coming to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, I think in an FA Cup game, scored an absolute beauty against us, playing more in the 8 role. Also, lots of talk from people who've seen Archie Gray throughout his career at Leeds and for the England unders age groups, that he's not really a natural 6 either. He's more of a box-to-box player himself. So perhaps Angel Gomez could be the answer to that for Tottenham Hotspur. One thing I would say, though, is, again, not the biggest guy. Quite easy to muscle off the ball in the Premier League, and it is so physical. And Ange Postecoglou knows how important physicality is in the elite leagues in England. So whether Gomez, despite the fact he's got wonderful technical ability, loves taking the ball on the half turn, always got his head up, always scanning, he's a beautiful little player. But will oppositions target him if he were to come to Spurs in the 6 and really just try and push him off the ball in 50-50s? Let me know what you think in the comments, as I said. As I talked about in the opening today, a couple of Spurs stars getting their agents to talk, really, leaking stories. First one, Christian Romero. We've talked for a long time about how he's on Real Madrid's list. Well, apparently Spurs have been asked to discuss Christian Romero's future with him. Romero's voiced concerns apparently over Tottenham's lack of Champions League football. That is a point that apparently has been raised internally several times over the past 6 months. Sounds to me like agent talk. Mr. 10% trying to get his oar in, trying to leak stories, trying to raise up that interest from Real Madrid. And I've talked about it a lot, especially in the summer. This is what Real Madrid do. They start getting their tentacles into the player early, maybe a year or 2 before they really think that they can get that player into the club. They talk to the agent, they get the agent to leak stories, they talk to the press, they talk to Marca in Spain, and they get those stories out, and I feel like that is what we're in the middle of now with Christian Romero. My only issue is whether that has affected Romero's concentration on the field, whether it has affected him, and that's why he isn't having as good a season as he did last year. For me, Christian, if you want to leave for Real Madrid, then play brilliant football for the rest of this season, and frankly, if they then pay the money that Daniel Levy is willing to accept, then I will say goodbye to you and wish you well. I think it's fair enough that players get their big move to clubs like Real Madrid. I don't think anyone should hold them back, but you've got to have been playing your best. When Gareth Bale went to Real Madrid for a world record fee of £85 million at the time, he had been far and away the best player in the Premier League that season. He was worthy of it. He'd done everything he could for Spurs to try and raise us to the next level, and he deserved his opportunity to go to Real Madrid. Now for me, Christian Romero, if he wants to go, he has to do the same. He has to show that he's the best centre-half, certainly at Spurs, but also one of the best centre-halves in the Premier League. And then we'll wave goodbye to you and we'll wish you well. But at the moment, the form isn't quite there. Like I've said in videos this week already, I think he feigned fitness to play against Ipswich and then was pretty appalling in that game just so he could go and play for Argentina, where, once again, he came back injured. And I don't think the attitude is quite right at the moment. And I think Real Madrid will notice that as well. So he's got to start playing his absolute best if he wants a chance to get Champions League football with Spurs for a start, but therefore also getting his move to Real Madrid. The other player, this won't surprise you, whose agent is talking again, is Radu Dragusin. And this amazes me because his form since he's come in has not been good enough at all. I know he hasn't got rhythm in his legs. He hasn't been playing a lot of football, so we've got to give him time. He's a young player still. We've got to be patient. But his agent, Florian Manea, has admitted that his client is flattered by Juventus and Napoli's interest, and they will evaluate his Tottenham status at the end of the season depending on his game time. The quotes coming out are as follows: "It's an honour for Radu to be wanted by teams like Napoli and Juve, but at the moment they're just rumours. We are focused on Tottenham. He still has 5 years left on his contract. It's not easy to go to a top club and make an impact right away. He's still 22 years old. If he never plays this year, it's normal that evaluations will be made. He won't move in January for sure. In June, we'll evaluate." Well, the main thing I'm taking out of that, other than being annoyed at his Mr. 10% just chatting shit all the time, he's only 22 years old, this kid. Look, he's signed for a big amount of money. He's 22 years old. It's a new league. The pace is higher. He certainly will have got a lot more time on the ball in Italy and therefore wouldn't have looked so stressed on the ball as he does in the Premier League. So we've got to give him the time. We've got to give him the patience. And I'm sure Big Ange Postecoglou will be saying that to him. However, his agent talking all the time is not helping. He's frankly not playing well enough at the moment for his agent to be saying, oh, he's in, basically alluding to the fact that he's in charge of his future. He's not. As he mentioned, he's got 5 years on his deal. The club will decide. It's as simple as that. The club will decide. And if Big Ange Postecoglou at the end of the season, all being well, decides that Radu Dragusin isn't the right man for Tottenham as the third choice centre-back, then sure. If Juventus or Napoli come in with the amount of money that we want then he can go. But he's 22 years old. Let's give him the chance to really play his way into the Premier League and learn how quickly you have to get the ball out of your feet and get passes away, because he just isn't getting the same amount of time he got in Italy, and that is affecting him at the moment. Another interesting bit of news I saw, Big Sam Allardyce went on a podcast, the ex-West Ham manager, the ex-Everton manager, the ex-Bolton manager. Where hasn't he managed, frankly? But he has gone on a podcast and given his opinion on Big Ange Postecoglou, a battle of the big men. I do love it, I have to say, that when a manager is just basically tall and a little bit wide, they're immediately given the moniker of big. Well, it's Big Sam versus Big Ange, and Big Sam has slagged off Ange's approach to the media. He said this: he must be totally different on the training ground than he is as an interviewee. There's a certain level you have to be pretty good at, otherwise people start questioning you. He might be the best coach or manager in the world, but people will question you because his interviews are not very good. Let me know what you think about that in the comments. There has been a fair bit of stick towards Big Ange Postecoglou about the fact that he kind of doesn't look interviewers in the eye when he's having interviews, and the fact that he kind of looks down. But for me, I've always just thought he's trying to think. He's trying to think about what the best way to answer each question is, both for him and for his side, making sure he doesn't throw the squad or the team under the bus the majority of the time, but also giving a fair reply. The other bit of stick that gets thrown his way is that he can be quite... I guess he comes across as quite antagonised often, certainly after Spurs have lost. But for me, what do you expect? Do you expect a manager to come out and be happy when they've lost? No, he's a little bit prickly. He's a little bit sarcastic. He's Australian, mate. That's what they're like. That is what it's like in Australia, And he's a Premier League manager now. He's being asked questions, sometimes difficult questions, and he doesn't always love it. And so he's kind of staring at the floor, not looking in the interviewer's eyes, because he's trying to make sure that he doesn't basically ruin it too much. He doesn't throw his players under the bus, and he doesn't make reports, headlines too much. So I don't have a problem with that personally, but maybe you think differently. Let me know in the comments. Certainly Big Sam Allardyce has said that he's a bad interviewee, but I don't know. I don't personally think that's an issue. So obviously it's been International Week this week. We've all been yawning our way through it, but the Spurs players have been out and about. Son Heung-min scored again for South Korea as they took another step closer to reaching the World Cup. He scored his 50th goal earlier in the week, and now he's ticked on to 51 goals with an equaliser this week against Palestine. Meanwhile, the Swedish team with Dejan Kulusevski are just going from strength to strength. He scored twice and got an assist in the week as they won 6-0 against Azerbaijan. He also made it 4-0 later in the game, 12 minutes in the second half. Sorry. Also, what I was trying to say is that Lucas Bergvall came off the bench in the second half as well and got some game time. So I think that's really good for him. Just a reminder of the amazing season that Dejan Kulusevski is happening in the Premier League. He is first for key passes and in fact has the most in Europe. He's first in terms of crosses and has the most in Europe. Deep completions first, progressive runs first in the Premier League, accelerations first, dribbles second, shot assists second, offensive duels second, passes into the penalty area second, and touches in the box second. For me, that just shows not only how brilliant Dejan Kulusevski is on the ball, but what an absolute workhorse he is. Running, getting into the penalty area, dribbling, making progressive runs, and also getting out wide for crosses and getting loads of key passes away. These are the kind of stats that make me feel very confident that when Tottenham can finally click and get something together and get a run going, and maybe getting all our players fit as well will help. We've suffered from a lot of injuries. In fact, we've suffered from the most injuries in the Premier League. I saw a stat come out this week on social media. Spurs something like 16 injuries so far. I think the second worst was with 14. So Tottenham have been unlucky with injuries again. That might again look towards Big Ange Postecoglou's training. Tottenham getting a lot of muscle injuries, and from previous clubs he's been at, we've heard from fans of Celtic, of clubs in Japan and in Australia, talking about how Ange Postecoglou's training regime does result in a lot of muscle injuries. Well, you know, we've got to be careful to try and improve that, but also just wanted to show how incredible Dejan Kulusevski has been on the pitch and in his ability not to get injured. And I do think that once Spurs get their injuries back and we can click under Ange Postecoglou, these kind of stats that Kulusevski is showing are going to really help us towards scoring a lot more goals. And let's face it, we've already scored more goals, I think, than anybody else in the Premier League, maybe certainly in the first one or two. So that's good news. Ben Davies wore the captain's armband for Wales, and Brennan Johnson scored a great goal as well as an assist in the 4-1 victory over Iceland. And that's really great news. Ben Davies winning his 92nd cap for Wales, taking him level with Neville Southall, who was an unbelievable goalkeeper for both Wales and Everton back in the 80s and 90s. But Brennan Johnson's goal was really good. He was put in, it was classic Johnson, put in the inside right position, inside right channel, drove at the defence, and then to one touch and finished it into the bottom left-hand corner. That's where Brennan Johnson is truly an elite player. They're the positions we need to get him in. He's a great finisher in those positions. So Tottenham need to do as Wales did and slot him into those positions. Ibasuma made it assists in back-to-back games for Mali as they secured top spot in Group 1 of the African Nations Cup qualifying. And Pape Matar Sarr played for Senegal. He completed 87 minutes for them as they registered a 2-0 win against Burundi. Meanwhile, a bit of a surprising one here. Loanee Brian Hill, who is still officially a Tottenham Hotspur player, although I believe his loan will be made permanent in the summer. He scored his first ever goal for the full Spanish national team against Switzerland in the UEFA Nations League. Hill was called up to the squad because of an injury to Lamine Yamal, and he got his first goal. Well done, Brian Hill. I've said for a long while, far too small for the Premier League, but clearly a very gifted technical player, clearly a trier, clearly a workhorse, but unfortunately just too thin, too easy to knock off the ball. And I hoped during his time at Spurs that he would put on the required kind of muscle mass, similar to what David Silva did, who's obviously a small guy too, but big. And just to go back to what I was saying at the start about Angel Gomez, it does worry me a little bit. Brian Hill was obviously a winger and was muscled off the ball far too easily, but for Angel Gomez to be that small and again, not that kind of wide, it does worry me in terms of his ability to be knocked off the ball. In terms of the unders, Dane Scarlett scored once again for the England under-21s as they earned a 1-1 draw with the Netherlands. Scarlett is in really good form. He scored 3 goals in his last 6 games for his lone side, Oxford United, and is still scoring for the England under-21s. Archie Gray also played the full 90 minutes in that England under-21 games he played at right back, So good to see Gray getting more minutes in his legs. Meanwhile, Will Lancashire played all the 90 minutes for the England under-20s elite squad. And then finally, today, I mentioned at the top, didn't I? It sounds like Spurs are going to do something good for the community. Well, Spurs have joined forces with Harlequins and Wigan Warriors rugby union and rugby league teams to run donation points at games in December for fans to donate soap, shampoo, shower gel, deodorant, toothpaste and toothbrushes for disadvantaged children. The Raheem Sterling Foundation is also involved in this Christmas campaign that's run by the social needs network, The Multibank. Quote says, the impact of hygiene poverty on young people and key workers is significant, driving school absence and social withdrawal, stretching precious NHS resources, increasing financial pressure on teaching staff, and destabilising mental health. That came from the Multibank. Tottenham's executive director Donna Marie Cullen said, we're certain that our football family will unite to ensure young people in our area are able to build their confidence from an early stage in life by having access to basic hygiene products. I thought worth bringing that to you because there has been a lot of stick thrown Spurs' way that other than Tottenham's foundation, which is obviously their own charity, which does mean that they get tax breaks on that. Other than that, Spurs don't do a lot in the community. So this collaboration with Multibank, I think, is good for the optics of Tottenham Hotspur. I've talked a lot about how Daniel Levy and Donna Cullen and the board don't often seem to care about the optics of decisions that they make. Well, this one does seem a little more positive, and I'm pleased to bring that news that Spurs are trying to help the community as much as they can. Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching and listening. Please do press that like button if you're watching on YouTube. Do subscribe to the channel for daily Tottenham Hotspur content, and you can listen if you're not already on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Go over there, give me a 5-star rating if you enjoy my daily content, and do follow or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of your hump day. Come on, you Spurs.